Welcome into the premiere episode of the All Things Mizzou podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joey Van Zummeren. Excited to welcome you into this new podcast brought to you by Missouri Tigers on SI. And I am joined by my co-host, Michael Stamps here, another football reporter here for the site. Michael, welcome to the show. How are we feeling? Fall camp.
Yeah, this is pretty exciting stuff. We're coming off a huge season last year. Expectations are high. It's going to be a goal to manage those expectations for sure. A lot of returning production, a lot of newcomers I think people are excited to see. I think there's a lot going for this team, and we have a lot to look forward to for sure.
Absolutely. So I went over to Columbia today for fall camp. We talked to Coach Drinkwitz, all the assistant coaches, and then some players as well. So we'll be playing some of those clips for you in this first episode. But before we get into any of that, any of the excitement of the 2024 season, we thought we'd introduce ourselves as well. We want this podcast to be a way for you guys to not only hear some more Missouri Tigers news, but also get to know us writers personally. So first off, I'm Joey, like I mentioned. I'm a sophomore at the University of Missouri. I covered the Mizzou football team last season, first for the Man-Eater, the student newspaper, before this MissouriOnSI site was revived. So I'm very excited for year two here. I'm from the St. Louis area, so O'Fallon, Illinois, just across the river, and excited to be back at it. Michael, what about you? You're a little bit east or west of Missouri, actually.
Yeah. So like you said, my name is Michael, like Joey. I'm a sophomore at the University of Missouri. I got myself started last year. I covered volleyball and men's basketball for the Man-Eater. I transitioned into an editor role kind of end of the second semester, and that's still going on for me, which is very exciting stuff. It's a very different opportunity. I love it. I am from Papillion, Nebraska. It's about dead in the middle of Omaha and Lincoln, and probably the only two cities anyone knows in Nebraska. And yeah, like Joey said, I'm excited, man. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Absolutely. So let's get straight into it with these fall camp practices. We talked to Coach Drinkwitz, like I mentioned. Kind of the main things we want to talk about today is just the general vibes heading into a year following, like Michael mentioned, a very successful year for the Missouri program, building on top of that, ignoring the expectations in a new way, putting their head down, and really focusing on improving, like the same goal for last season that got them to that point. We'll be talking about some of the key position battles, what freshmen can contribute right away, including Williams Winery that Eli Drinkwitz was asked about today. So a lot on tap today for this first episode. And let's head right into it, just like we were talking about, of managing the expectations for the season and kind of the mindset the team is taking on this year. We saw Coach Drinkwitz talk at SEC Media Days, too, about just needing to ignore the noise. The mindset last year was obviously something to prove. That first started as wanting to prove the voices on the outside wrong. A lot of doubters about the Missouri program. And then in fall camp of 2023, it really turned into wanting to prove each other right, having this beliefs in themselves that they needed to fulfill. Coach Drinkwitz talked about how, for him personally, how the 2023 season was so validating for him and his coaching staff to actually have that proof that their process worked, that they were going about it the right way. I'm sure many of the players felt that same way, especially the guys like Darius Robinson, Brady Cook, Cody Schrader, that have been working towards this for so long. And then finally in 2024 or 2023, rather, all came together for them. Now flip the page to 2024, and for the first time in quite some time, there is some high expectations for the Missouri football program. The standard or not the standard, but the expectation for them this season is to be one of the top teams contending for a spot in the 12-team college football playoff. But Coach Drinkwitz today, as he has harped many times during last year as well, is if you're going to ignore the outside voices when they are saying negative things about you, you have to have the same mindset when they are saying positive things about you. So, I mean, Michael, just your thoughts on the mindset Mizzou is taking into this year, if you think it's the right approach or if you have any criticism for
No, I absolutely love it. And it's kind of like last season's expectations got flipped on itself. It's completely different now. Like you said, I think a lot of media polls and, big organizations, everyone's expecting Missouri to do good this year, justifiably. And like last year, they were trying to prove themselves to everyone that they deserve to be there. Now they have the proof that they think they should be there. And I think it's really easy to let that preseason media attention get to your head as a team. The rankings, the preseason watch lists, and that sort of thing. And it's going to have to be a situation where they go get it on a game-by-game basis, right? One thing at a time, one practice at a time, one game at a time. And if the rankings increase, or if you move up in the rankings, you move up. If you go down, you go down. If you win an award, you win an award. I don't think that's why they're doing it. Like you said, people expect them to be one of those teams competing for the college football playoff this year, and I would imagine that's the end goal, right? So at the end of the day, these award lists, these polls and rankings and this media attention, it's nice. It's the validation they probably want, and it's easy to let that get to their head, but it's going to be important not to, if they want to, stay on that right track and with their goals in mind, get into the college football playoff. It's going to be important to keep that and tune that out.
Absolutely. I mean, it's almost impossible to ignore that idea, the pot of gold at the end of the road, that they could very easily be one of the top 12 teams in college football by the end of the season, have a national championship only 3 games away from them. But Coach Drinkwitz has really instilled the mindset in this team, and it was obvious when talking to them today as well, taking it one game at a time, and even looking at taking Murray State more seriously than probably any opponent in Power 5 has ever taken them before. Making sure, there's a lot of games they could circle on their calendar right now. I asked Theo Weiss if he's circling the Oklahoma game on his calendar today, and he said no. It definitely does seem like the team has taken on this mindset that it has to be taking every opponent seriously, and that instead of looking ahead, you got to focus on the game right in front of you, because if you don't, those games later on won't mean as much. A game against Oklahoma doesn't mean as much if you already have 2 or 3 losses on the season.
Yeah.
So it really seems that Coach Drinkwitz has once done a great job of getting his players to buy in, and he'll have to continue doing that. He talked about today how much of a goal it is for fall camp to create unity on the team with their mindset. And so that's the challenge that lies ahead of him. But it seems, at least from talking to the players today, that he's off to a great start with that, along with the rest of the coaching staff.
For sure. To tag one more thing along, I think there's a lot of media chatter about the schedule and maybe saying it's not as difficult as it could be, or it's not as difficult as others. I think that's another thing that could easily get into your head. We think this game's easy. Like, we should win this game. We don't have to give it a full 100% effort. Like you mentioned, like game by game, they're gonna treat Murray State like it's the college football championship, right? You got to make sure every game's important, or prioritize every game, because again, Oklahoma doesn't matter if you have 3 losses. I mean, you can't compete for an SEC championship if you have 3 losses. So on paper, it might look easier. The media chatter, media people saying it might be easier. Yeah, maybe that's true. You still have to go in and win those games to make sure you get to that end goal.
Absolutely. So that's one of the things that Coach Drinkwitz harped on today. Another one was just the idea of always competing. He talks about this a lot. I mean, it is classic coach speak, but I believe Coach Drinkwitz that he wants to create a team, create an environment where guys are always looking behind their shoulder to see who might be coming for their job. Now, when he says, like for instance, with offensive line competition, that nobody is coming in with preconceived notions on the coaching staff. Nobody is coming with a leg up on anybody else. It's like, well, obviously you're going to have more trust in a guy like Connor Tollison, who what you can expect out of. You've seen him play at his best. Same with Cameron Johnson, these returning guys. But I do certainly believe him that, a guy can lose his job quickly if they don't bring the right approach to it. The one I think of specifically on the offensive line, I think of the Packers. I also follow them and write for the Packers on SI site. Yosh Nijman, who is now a member of Michael's Carolina Panthers.
Is he?
Yes, Yosh Nijman I mean, he's just a depth piece offensive lineman, but he was a guy that was on the Packers for quite some time, worked his way up the practice squad. He was on the practice squad, I think, for his first 2 or 3 years of his career, and then eventually worked his way into the lineup and was a really consistent, reliable guy. Started quite a few games for Green Bay, and then into the 2023 season last fall in training camp, he completely disappeared out of the lineup. Coaches were pretty, just odd talking about him, talking about the lack of effort he put in. And, Yash was a guy that he had shown them what he could do, but he clearly did not bring the right approach to it. And especially on a team like the Packers, youngest roster in the league, that is just creating constant competition. And that's really the Packers themselves benefited from that last year, just bringing the best out of everybody on the team by creating that competition and that uncomfortability with your spot on the roster. And so I think specifically on the offensive line, even if you are a returning starter, you have some young guys right behind you. This offensive line room is, there is certainly some questions. There's going to be some new pieces, and it could be different. Maybe Marcus Bryant might not work out as well as Mizzou is hoping for. Same with Caden Green at left guard. But there is some really exciting potential there, especially when you talk about the younger guys and Logan Reichert, Kansas City product, who we still haven't seen much out of, but just is an athletic freak who could really do some exciting stuff at guard. Along with Javen Richardson, who I talked to offensive line coach Brandon Jones today, and he mentioned Richardson as one of those guys competing for that starting left tackle job. Talon Chandler as well. Just a really deep room. And it's going to be really interesting to see how they compete this year and what that lineup looks like. And Brandon Jones was also talking about just how confident he is for the first time in a long while about the second lineup of guys they have, and especially on the offensive line where there's constantly guys rotating in and out with injuries. You really want to have depth in that room, and it seems like you want the competition to not only breed the best out of the guys at the top, but also from the guys at the bottom, even if they're not get into their starting roles, that they're still have a chance to play and will capitalize on that and won't let you down when they have to be thrown out there. Michael, just your thoughts on the offensive line competition. I know you're a big Javen Richardson guy.
Yeah. I think the two positions you mentioned, left tackle and left guard, are really the only ones that might be up for debate. I mean, Tolleson, I think he's more than solidified his job. I think Cameron Johnson's pretty much solidified his job, and Armand Membu as well. Unless, knock on wood, they go down with injury. There's guys ready to step up, but I think left tackle and left guard are the two big spots. Javen Richardson is another just freak athlete. Little on the smaller side, but he has tackle and guard experience. And Logan Reichert as well, the redshirt freshman, like you said, from Kansas City. Another just absolute animal. He is huge. Freak athlete. I'd be surprised if Caden Green didn't solidify the left guard spot week 1. Same thing with Marcus Bryant. All signs point to him having the starting job at left tackle day 1. He has played nearly every snap of his career at left tackle. So he knows what he's doing over there. Who's to say if it works out or not, but he certainly has the experience. There are guys ready to back him up. Same thing goes with Green. Little on the younger side, but clearly we know from his high school rankings and time at he is talented. He's very talented. And maybe a couple more bumps in the road for him just because of an experience thing. But yeah, if they aren't the day 1 starters, I'd be surprised.
Right, offensive line specifically, it feels like a position you really favor experience at. That's a difficult position. I mean, coming into the SEC, no matter how good you were in high school, just a difficult transition to make.
Absolutely.
Another position where there's a quasi competition going on, you could say, is running back. And there's really not much competition, at least it would seem from the outside. Again, it's difficult to parse out when Coach Drinkwood speaks on, how much coach speak is in there. But it would feel like Marcus Carroll, the Georgia State transfer, and the Nate Noel have those two spots pretty solidified. But then you do look at a guy like Jamal Roberts, who Coach Drinkwitz praised today, said he had a really good fall camp last season. Tavares Jones as well. Quan Lacey, the incoming 4-star freshman out of Texas, that could really, there won't be, I'm sure the more running backs you have that are able to play, the better. But last year, the Missouri offense showed that they really didn't need a 2-3 running back committee. I mean, it's not often that Cody Schrader comes around, a guy like him. But it was odd. Nate Pete played a consistent role in the first few weeks of the season. Then after Cody Schrader took off, Pete was completely forgotten about, even though he had some good ability in the passing game. But Coach Drinkwitz talked about that. I know he was asked sometime mid-season last year about just the need or the desire to have more running backs in the room that can consistently contribute and rotate them more. So with Jones, Roberts, Lacey, if they are on the field, it's only going to be because they are good enough or because of injury to Carroll or Noel. So they really have all the opportunity in the world this fall camp to go out there and prove that they deserve some more playing time. So, I mean, Michael, not too much questions about the top two guys like we mentioned, but just your thoughts on kind of the bottom of that room and especially Lacey.
Yeah, Lacey's another guy. He's an incredible athlete. Like you said, he's from Texas. There's just, at the end of the day, there's just no telling. It could be a week-by-week thing. It could be practice by practice. Who did better that week? Maybe they're the third guy. But there's just not really any telling what we're going to see from any of the three. We might not see them at all. I think an important thing to note, not about the bottom three, but about Noel and Carroll, it's not going to be a Cody Schrader situation, right? This is, I anticipate like a 1-2, combo. Carroll is, he's hefty and he is powerful and he's going to run up the gut. Noel is quicker, shiftier. So it's going to be different. We're going to see a lot more of two running backs than we did last year, I think. But yeah, we could be proven wrong easily, right? Maybe one of the bottom three steps up here before the end of the preseason, end of the fall, and we see one get a couple touches here in the early weeks. But I anticipate seeing Carroll and Noel majority of the snaps. I honestly can't even give a lean to one of the bottom three. I don't know if you have any thoughts. If there's one that you kind of favor, but I don't think I can even say.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say Roberts, just because, again, of what I said of Drinkwitz laying some praise on him. But yeah, I mean, it's just difficult to tell, especially from the outside. And I mean, we'll be able, the media, to get to see some of these practices, see what's going on there. But it's just individual drills, so we're not really seeing too much of how each guy is being used. So it's difficult to tell, and especially with the young guys, who's really going to pierce through and get a larger role. But like you mentioned, it really could be throughout the season, just testing different guys out situationally. I know Coach Drinkwitz mentioned as well, one of the main things to look at with running backs is pass protection, how well you can read a blitz. You would think Carroll and Noel, I'm not sure how much they did of that at their respective schools, but just have the experience, even though, they're in non-Power 5 conferences, would even have a leg up in pass protection as well. But who knows, maybe Jones, Robert, or Lacey really refined that area of their game in high school. I did want to bring up, I talked to running backs coach Curtis Luper. We had a great conversation about the skill sets of both Noel and Carroll, and then also just kind of the differences between inside and outside zone, how much of that Missouri runs, and how much experience the both of them had in that. Noel, Marcus Carroll, tell us about them a little bit.
Really good spring, and they've been here now for 7 months. We wanted them to just assimilate into our culture, and become a member of the brotherhood. That was our first objective, and I think that's happened. They fit right in. Great personalities, great young men, and they're going to be great Mizzou Tigers.
Is there any challenge with the wide zone blocking schemes that you guys run and kind of acclimating them to that as well, especially because with the transfer portal you have guys coming in from a bunch of different schemes that might not be familiar with it?
Yeah, that's just one of the main focal points for us early on. You know, Nate did some similar stuff offensively at App State. Marcus they were more of an inside zone team, but those guys played a lot of football.
Right.
It was a good transition into this offense.
Yeah. What's the difference if you have a guy like Marcus who's more familiar with the inside zone? Is there any big difference besides just having the vision?
Well, we ran both. We ran a lot of inside zone, outside zone with Cody and counter. But you know, some guys just like to get downhill fast, and some guys can run, a little more laterally. Which, you know, even outside zone is not a. It's more probably of what people would consider a mid zone. You know, it's not wide. We're not trying to actually, get all the way to the D gap. It's a vertical play. It's a physical play, and we had a good time this spring installing it to those two.
Yeah, Coach Rink was just talking about the spring or the fall Jamal Roberts had last year, and the opportunity he's going to have this fall again. Just a little bit of your thoughts on Jamal.
Yeah, Jamal, he's very conscientious. He had a chance to sit and watch Cody Schrader, lead every day, watch Cody take care of his body, watch Cody, obviously lead the SEC in rushing and lead the nation in yard rushing per game. So, Jamal will take some of the leadership role this year. When you play college football, the first thing you're going to do is play special teams. So we want Jamal to really be good on special teams for us, and then we'll kind of let the chips fall where they may insofar as who's going to carry the football for us.
That's running backs coach Curtis Luper. Now, the one other position I wanted to talk about in these competitions and this core value of always competing is cornerback. That is just an interesting room at the moment because you got Drayden Norwood in there. You got Torianno Pride, the Clemson transfer. Those are your two guys that we've seen really any consistent playing time from. Shamar McNeil, we saw sparingly last season. But other than that, the rest of the cornerback room is interesting. Missouri seems to be really confident in these guys, and I'm not doubting that they're going to be able to put out a solid product in the secondary this season. But it's a bit of a question mark at this point. Michael, just your thoughts on the cornerbacks right now.
Pride and Norwood are going to be 1 and 2. A name I'd like to keep an eye out, and it's kind of a flyer. He switched positions. He was a receiver out of high school. It's Jamarian Wayne. I'm really interested to see how that transition goes. I think he's had a pretty good preseason and fall and spring. And that would just be an interesting transition. So I'm interested to see how that goes. You mentioned McNeil, Nick DeLoach as well. Guys we just haven't seen a ton of they'll probably see the field, I'll imagine. So we'll get a taste of them pretty quick. But yeah,
it's hard to see, Cameron Keys kind of emerging in that room. But again, with the freshmen, it's just so difficult to tell. Yeah. It really just becomes, and I'm sure the coaches at this point don't even know it, even if they had them in the spring, just really who is, the most consistent in practice, make a play a day, get some more attention. And even with the guys that did, the success of Brett Norfleet at tight end, Marquise Johnson at wide receiver last year, two true freshmen really making an impact on the Mizzou offense last season. It wasn't as if they came out there against South Dakota State and lit it up. And same thing next week. It really, both of them were really easy along. Brett Norfleet was pretty much sharing or splitting 50-50 playing time at tight end with Tyler Stevens at the start of last season up until the LSU game almost. And he really had a great game against LSU. There's a little bit before that, really, I guess, against Vanderbilt too, that they really started to use him more often as a blocker. And I talked to Norfleet too about that today and just how he really needed to have his confidence grow in that area. And I think Brett Norfleet, this is a soft topic, but I think he's going to be a really exciting player to watch this year, especially after 100%. Talking to him today.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's just difficult to tell with those freshmen coming in, and it's just so much of their confidence, how consistent they are, and even if they do have a good fall camp, really, testing them out in those non-conference games when you get the opportunity.
We're going to talk about freshmen here later on, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Another one that I think in the cornerback room, I forgot to mention earlier, that could get some reps, and he's versatile. He could play safety too. I think Trajan Greco is a guy who could see the field. Maybe that's on special teams a little bit. But I think he's talented enough to maybe see the field at corner. He's listed as a safety. I think he's flip-flopped in high school. But like you said, there's really no telling with the freshmen. It's really only the bits and pieces we're hearing. There's also going to be plenty of red shirts that we can't predict. So he was a 4-star, right? So I don't know if they want to get him on the field or if they want to save his talent, give him an extra year. But I think he is a candidate to potentially see the field on the back end of that cornerback room.
Right, and we should also mention Marcus Clark here. Appeared in 9 games last season. I mean, that's the good thing for Norwood and Clark too, really, is, with some of the injuries they had last season in the secondary, Ennis Rakestraw missing a good portion of the season, was just getting to have these guys get more experience. I will say a player, not at cornerback, but safety, who really capitalized on some injuries and getting some opportunities last year was Marvin Burks at safety. Really excited to watch him grow this season. But sticking with the cornerback room, I also talked to Torianno Pride today, and kind of on the same topic of what the lineup is going to look like, how are they going to use these guys. Pride talked to me today about just the difference between slot and corner, or slot and boundary corner, his experience at both, and what he expects his role to be in 2024. So here's that conversation with Torianno Pride from Clemson.
First few weeks like, and just what stands out to you about Mizzou?
It was good. It was getting just adjusted to a new program. It really wasn't nothing too different because I've been in college for 2 years, so it wasn't really different too much.
Yeah, you have experience playing both in slot and on the boundary, right? Yeah. What's the big difference between those? Is there kind of like a different skill set you need to tap into?
You got a lot more field. Field to cover. It's more of a two-way go. And you don't got a lot of help in the slot. Yeah.
Gotcha. Do you know, you don't have to share any secrets with me, but are you planning for you to line up kind of at both fall camp, try both out?
Just wherever Coach Batoon want me, wherever Coach Cole want me. I've been doing a lot outside, but play probably I forgot the word for it. Game prep.
Okay,
whatever they decided to do.
Okay, gotcha. So it could be like a game type thing, or just wherever need necessitates type thing. Yeah. With your decision to transfer to Missouri, obviously you're local, but how much of it too was just seeing the success that they've had with corners in the past few years? You have Ennis, Chris Abenstrain. How much were those kind of guys
that played a big role.
Yeah.
And it also played a big role that they were both leaving at the time I was in the portal. So, and this is home to me, and my relationship with Coach Drink, that played a big role.
What did Eli do to kind of establish that relationship, and what made him different from other coaches?
Nothing really. He didn't really have to do too much. Me and Coach Drink had a very strong relationship before I even got to college, coming out of high school. And we just kept we never burned the bridge, basically. So, yeah, as soon as I hit the portal,
gotcha.
Reached out. Yeah.
Okay, so he's quick on the case?
Yeah.
With Drayden Norwood, how much time have you spent playing next to him on the field, and just what are your thoughts on him?
People don't know. I knew Drayden before we even both got to college. We was on an Arkansas visit. And he committed to Arkansas, and I remember I was there. But it's fun. Dre, that's my guy.
Yeah.
We got history though. This is my first time playing on the field with him though.
Okay. Got it. What's your relationship with him? What did you talk about on that Arkansas visit?
Yeah, outside of football, he's a cool guy. We chill. We don't. I've been here in the summer. The summer's really been boring, so not really too much to do. But he's a cool guy.
Okay, yeah, and going into this season, I mean, you guys are pretty much the two most experienced guys in that room. I mean, what mindset are you guys taking on to be leaders in there?
Just lead, help the guys that don't, I might need a little bit more help or little techniques and stuff like that, but just help everybody in the room.
All right, that rounds out all of our conversations about these competitions on Mizzou's football roster for fall camp. We'll see, changes always happen. We'll see. There will be at least one surprise when they roll out there against Murray State, exactly a month from when this episode is coming out. Next up, you mentioned a little bit, Michael, about the true freshmen this year. I mean, we just kind of had a good conversation on the confusion or the guessing game that comes with which player can make an impact, because all of these guys, especially now with how Mizzou is recruiting, so many of these guys were fantastic in high school, but it more so depends on not only the way they perform, but also the situation they're in, the position group they're in, what injuries arrive, that they're able to get some opportunities. But who are some guys you're looking at that could possibly be some playing time this year?
Well, before I hit on specifics, I think it's fun to mention, I think Coach Drinkwitz is a little unpredictable, right? And also
with what he says and his coaching decisions, I think you could say.
Absolutely, yes. But so are these incoming freshmen, right? And I think an interesting point to bring up, as soon as they're on campus and as soon as they're practicing, all the stars, all the recruiting rankings, that goes out the window. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now your coaches are looking for, how are we going to insert you into the lineup? Are you showing the things? Are we seeing the things that we're looking for, both as a player at your position, as a leader? Are you talking, communicating? Are you a good teammate? That sort of thing. The willingness to put your body on the line, just the relentless kind of energy. And I think that all the stars and stuff go out the window as soon as you're on campus. That being said, I think Williams Nwaneri is probably the guy we're all going to look at and say he's going to see the field at some point. It doesn't mean he's going to have a huge role, whether he's probably playing defensive end. There's a lot of depth at that position with transfers brought in and returners. So I don't expect him to start by any means. I would be shocked if he didn't get some sort of playing time right away. We can say this about every recruit coming in. He is just a freak of nature athletically. Yes. He's 6'6", 265 or something similar, and he moves like someone his size should not be moving. And the combination of pass rush moves and that sort of thing will come along. How to get around defenders, that sort of thing. Footwork, his hand placement, that's all going to come along with just playing time. I think he's going to be too talented not to put on the field. So I think that's kind of the main one to look at. Then it gets a little murky, right? That's when the guessing game, I honestly believe, starts. You look at the receiver room; it's arguably the best unit on the entire Tiger team. There's probably 9 or 10 guys you can argue should get to see the field, and at least 6 that deserve right away to play. I think James Madison and Courtney Crutchfield are on that list. They're, again, both very talented. Crutchfield is a burner. He is so fast. He can beat you over the top every single time. He'll go up and get a jump ball too. I think he could see the field, but it's just one of those things. I mean, you have your main guys. You have Luther Burden, obviously, Theo Weiss. You have Mookie Cooper, Marquise Johnson. Then you keep going down the list. Then you have Mekhi Miller. Then you have Daniel Blood. Then you have Joshua Manning, who had a very impressive spring. It just gets hard to put guys like Crutchfield and Madison on the field when people are already proving themselves. But no one expected Marquise Johnson to see the field, so who's to say, right? It's the guessing game, like we were talking about. We brought up Greco and Keys. Keys probably not, Greco potentially. Jaron Sensabaugh is another possibility, 4-star freshman, cornerback, another guy who could maybe get some reps. Linebacker Brian Huff, another talented guy, great tackler. Maybe a couple more openings in that middle linebacker spot, right? Same thing with Nicholas Rodriguez, lower rated freshman, but another really solid linebacker. There's so many names you could throw out there. It's just a guessing game. What are your thoughts, Joey?
Absolutely. I mean, for Winery at first, I definitely agree with you. As far as it's difficult to see him not having somewhat of a role immediately. I think especially in non-conference games, he's just going to be able to win so much off of his sheer power. And I think that's for the freshman on all that we've talked about on what earns him playing time. I think a lot of it can be just the fundamentals. How much do they have that down? Because in high school, if you're the fastest player on the field, if you're the strongest player on the field, you're going to dominate. When you're playing in the SEC, you're with all of those highest, the fastest player on the field in high school, with you're going up against 11 of those guys, best at whatever they do. So if you can really become a really mature player really quickly, and pair that with your natural skills like Winery has, then you can really get a much larger role immediately as a freshman. So be exciting to see Winery in there. But yeah, like you mentioned, especially at the wide receiver room, Crutchfield and Madison are certainly two of the most exciting prospects in this class, but it's difficult to see them really getting above anybody in that room right now. All right, now to wrap up our first episode, just two news points, housekeeping notes that Drinkwitz brought up today. First off, two players on Missouri's roster, Christopher Cray and safety Isaac Thompson, had to be medically redshirted. Cray, most Missouri fans probably have not heard of him unless they paid attention to coverage during the spring game. He was the captain for one of the teams in the spring game at running back. Really respected leader in that room. Also a great special team player, has played consistently contributed on special teams for Missouri over the past 2 seasons. But I think Coach Drinkwitz said that Chris Cray was with them all summer, is going to stay with them this year in a coaching sort of role as a mentor for some of these players, which I think almost, apart from his impact on special teams, Chris Cray can still have the same impact on the running back room that he has always had, even if he's not playing on the field. They talk about just how much he sets the tone for that running back room. And I'm sure even if he's not playing, not practicing, he can still kind of have that same impact. And then safety Isaac Thompson, a sophomore who's coming off a redshirt freshman year in 2023, also placed on the medically redshirted list. Haven't seen much from Thompson, but he was a 4-star prospect. So after he recovers, could be an exciting prospect for Missouri to develop. Coach Drinkwitz also mentioned some staff changes today with the NCAA's new rule allowing assistants to be able to actually coach players. Missouri had quite a few promotions, including Jake Yoro to safeties coach, Sean Gleason as a assistant quarterbacks coach to Kirby Moore, and then Durham Cato as a tight ends coach. So just kind of mobilizing guys around and really making the most of their coaching staff that they have. But I think that's everything we got to discuss. Any final points, Michael, you want to make here?
I mean, losing a guy like Chris Cray can be a tough locker room thing, but he'll be around. So, and he's, loved on that team by the players and the staff. Fans might not know him, but he plays an integral role on that team. So it's good that he's going to be around.
Absolutely. But that will do it for us here on the first episode of the All Things Mizzou podcast. I'm Joey Van Zummeren. He's Michael Stamps. Stay tuned to our episodes. Next week, we'll be talking more about fall camp, some more previews of the 2024 season. So stay tuned to that. And also everything we got going on over at Missouri Tigers on SI. We appreciate you tuning in to our first episode. You can find us on YouTube as well as anywhere you find your podcasts. Thank you for tuning in.